The suit had taken 14 months instead of the traditional one, because Sienna's schedule split itself between two hemispheres, but her Aunt Yolanda had told her plainly, more than once, it is finished when it is finished, and not one day before. On the morning Sienna flew home between Honryo engagements, it was finally finished. It stood in the front room where the light came through the old shutters and stripes, a riot of color against the muted wood, blues and golds and a deep burgundy that matched, though no one had planned it, the dress she'd worn the night she saved a stranger's life in Seoul. Beadwork ran across the chest in patterns that told a story only the Delacroix family and a handful of elders in the wider Mardi Gras Indian community could fully read. A story of arrival, of ancestry claimed rather than given, of a lineage that had turned resistance into ceremony because ceremony was the only kind of resistance the world couldn't take from you by force. He'd have said something about the making being the point and then cried anyway, Sienna said. Mister. Sounds about right. Sienna's cousin Renee arrived with her 3 kids in tow, all of them immediately drawn to the suit's crown, reaching small hands toward the feathers before Yolanda swatted them back, with the practiced efficiency of a woman who'd raised 4 children in a house full of irreplaceable things. The kitchen filled, the way it always did on days like this, with more people than the house was built for, and exactly the right number of people for what the day meant. You gon' wear it for the second line practice this weekend, Renee asked, hip against the counter, watching Sienna, the way family watches you when they're trying to read whether you're actually all right or just performing all right for the room. That's the plan. And then what? Back to Seoul on Monday like none of this happened? Sienna didn't answer right away. It was a fair question and a familiar one, the same question, dressed differently, that every member of her family had been asking her in one form or another since she was 18 years old and boarded a plane back to a country that wasn't the one that raised her, chasing a life she'd built entirely, she believed, with her own 2 hands. Then I go back to Seoul, she said finally. But I go back different every time. That's got to count for something. Jae-Won had never asked Sienna directly about the tradition she carried with her the way other men carried a family crest. He had, however, asked Sung-hyun to quietly research it, which was, for Jae-Won, the same thing as carrying out loud. It's not costume, Sung-hyun told him, reading from a brief he'd prepared without being asked twice. It's closer to scripture. A year of labor for one day of wearing, then it's undone and remade. The tribes trace back generations, a tradition of masking that started in part as a way to honor the native peoples who sheltered escaped enslaved people in Louisiana. They call it a prayer you can see. Jae-Won said nothing for a long moment. He was a man who ran an empire on permanence. Buildings, contracts, bloodlines that did not bend. The idea of building something magnificent on purpose to take it apart again sat in him like a splinter he didn't want removed, because removing it would mean admitting how much it had already changed the way he thought about everything he'd spent his life protecting. Send me photographs if there are any in the public record, Jae-Won said. There aren't many. The tradition isn't performed for outsiders. It's not meant to be documented the way Western institutions document things. It's meant to be witnessed in person by people who understand what they're looking at. Then I won't understand it from a photograph. No, Sung-hyun agreed. You wouldn't. Jae-Won set the brief down and sat with it a long while after Sung-hyun left. He thought of his own family's traditions, the annual visit to his father's grave, silent and formal, a wreath laid by an assistant, while Jae-Won stood 3 feet back in a suit that cost more than most people's cars, feeling nothing that resembled the word prayer. He wondered, not for the first time this year, what it might have felt like to grow up inside a tradition, built to be felt rather than merely observed. A year to make, 1 day to wear. If you believe some things are worth building even knowing they won't last forever, subscribe and stay with this story. She called him that night, which she had not done before, from a porch 2 doors down from the second-line rehearsal, a photo of the finished suit still open on her phone, the sound of a brass band warming up somewhere down the block. I wanted someone in Seoul to know it exists, she said, which was as close as she had come yet to saying she wanted him, specifically, to know. It's extraordinary, he said, looking at the photo for longer than the moment required. Sung-hyun told me it's remade every year. Ed, you had him look it up. I wanted to understand what I was looking at before I said something foolish about it. She laughed, the real laugh, the one Declan had heard a fragment of in an elevator and not known the value of yet. Mr. Yoon, she said, you might be the first man I've met who does his homework before he compliments a woman. I intend to keep it that way. Behind her, someone called her name, Renee, waving her toward the gathering crowd, the band starting up in earnest now, a low brass line that Sienna felt in her sternum more than heard. She turned the phone so he could see it just for a second, color and sound and her whole family moving together down a street that had known her family's names for generations. I have to go, she said. They're starting. Go, he said. I'm glad you called. Jae-Won. It was the first time she'd used his name without the Mr. in front of it. He heard it the way a man hears his own name spoken by someone whose voice he's been waiting, without admitting it, to hear say it. Yes? Thank you for asking about it instead of just complimenting the photo. Das. Always, he said, and meant it more completely than the single word could hold. She looked at the suit one more time before going to bed, the beadwork catching the porch light through the window. A year of making, one day of wearing, then it begins again. She was starting to understand that this was not only a tradition. It was quietly becoming a description of her own heart, something she kept building, wearing once, taking apart, and beginning again, every time she thought she'd finally finished it. That's this episode of Whiskey and War. If you're new here, welcome. Hit subscribe so you don't lose your place. Next episode, What Sung Hyun Knows. Trust me, you don't want to miss it.